Hi, I'm Margaret Lewin and welcome to Margaret Lewin Quilting. Today we're going to be making these 3 blocks, which are also known as the album block. And we are going to be making in this series this entire quilt called SummerMoon Block of the Month. This is designed by Carrie Nelson, and it is a 10-month block of the month program. So every month, on the first Thursday of every month, I will be putting out a video that explains to you exactly how to make your blocks. So today we are starting with this block, which, as I said, is the album block. We're going to be making it in 3 different sizes, and they will all go into this quilt at the end. Couple of things I want to tell you about before we get making the block is it is my suggestion that you cut out the fabric for all 3 blocks in the beginning. So once you get your fabric pressed and squared up, I suggest that you do cut all 3 blocks at once. The book is extremely clear as to what fabrics you need and the exact sizes that you cut them. I will not be giving any fabric dimensions, and the reason for that is to protect the copyright laws of this book. You do need to purchase SummerMoon Block of the Month by Carrie Nelson in order to follow through on this block of the month. If you don't already own the book, I will put in the description below a place to get a hold of this book so that you can join us on this block of the month. So here obviously are my finished blocks. Stick around and I'm going to show you step by step how I made them. It is time for block number 1, and you can see here I've got my block all laid out. Now remember we're making 3 different sizes of this block. So here's block 1, and here is block 2, and here is the smallest size, block 3. So I'm going to start by putting together the largest block first, and then I'm going to work my way down to the smaller block. This will give me the opportunity to get a feel for putting the block together and also to work my skills up to the smaller size block. So I'm going to get started. How I'm going to sew this thing together is I will first attach these, then these, then I'll attach the whole row. I'm going to start sewing up here. I'll sew all the way down, then add what needs to be added. I'm going to try really hard to not stop sewing in between. Once I get my strips, you can see there's a bunch of strips here. Once I get my strips sewn together, I'm going to come back and show you how I'm going to mark them so that I can put them all together and have them properly centered. So I will be back in just a few minutes. All right, I've got all my rows sewn together, and I did have to stop a couple of times and take pieces out because I got kind of confused on my sewing order. So my pieces are all put together. Now I'm going to press them, and when I press them, I am going to press everything towards the background fabric. So I'm going to go through, I'll do that, and then I will be back to show you how I'm going to go about marking the center of each one of these so that I can line them up perfectly so that they go together nice and easily. So I'll be right back. I want to share with you exactly how I went about ironing these things. You'll see when I set the seams, I did move the iron around a little bit. Probably shouldn't have. But what I'm doing is starting out by setting the seams, and then I'm just gently holding it over, and then I'm just setting the iron straight down. I'm trying really hard not to move the iron. The reason why I don't want to move the iron is because I really and truthfully do not want to stretch my pieces of fabric at all. And the reason being is because I'm prepping myself to doing a tiny block. And when you get working on a very tiny block, what ends up happening is any stretching of the fabric at all gets really distorted because you're working with such small pieces of fabric. So I'm going to let you go ahead and watch how I do this, and you will see in a couple of minutes I actually do start using my strip stick in a way of manipulating the fabric just a little bit easier. Now, if you've never heard of a strip stick, I'll put a link below or else up in the corner to exactly what a strip stick is and why I absolutely love them so much, especially whenever I am pressing seams open. Obviously, in this case, I'm not pressing them open. I'm pressing them to one side, but I still really like how the strip stick helped me in pressing this block. All right, so I think you can see here I've done little marks at the halfway point on all of these, and I'm going to use that halfway point to line up my blocks because I want my center to be my square, not necessarily the ends, because we're going to trim it up. So this is the medium-sized block. I'm going to go ahead and get that sewn together, then I'll work on the smallest of blocks. All right, I'm going to try really hard to show you how I do this. Here's my block, and you can see my little purple point. And then here's the block I'm attaching it to. I'm just going to take and line those up. Then I'll turn them, and I'm going to try to keep my hands out of the view. And right there's one dot. There's the other dot. I'm going to line those two dots up. All right. And then I'm going to put a pin right there. Get a hold of one. Once I've put my pin there, what I'm going to do is just line up the other portions of that strip. Feel free, if you're more comfortable, to put a couple more pins in, which is not a problem. Stick another one in here. We're going to want to watch this one especially to make sure that it stays nice and flat. We have a string there that I want to pull out of the way. And then I'm going to sew. Now, excuse me for the camera bouncing a little bit. I am actually sewing this all by myself with the camera between me and my machine, which is not always the easiest to do, but I want you to get a good shot of it. So here I am. I'm using my knee lift. Bernina has a wonderful feature to their machines that is a knee lift. I love it. I use it all the time. So now I'm just going to start stitching. When I get my presser foot holding that fold, which I think you can see it, it's right here. My presser foot has it. I'm going to then use my knee lift to pull my pin out. That way I'm not disrupting my fabric. Put my fabric back down and continue to sew. Now every time I come up to a needle, I will do that same thing. Use my knee lift, pull my needle out, put my knee lift back down, and then continue to sew. And here I go. My next pin. And then keep going. I obviously don't need to sew off the fabric. I just need to sew to the shortest piece of the fabric that I'm attaching. So I'm going to clip my thread. I'm going to turn it over, let you see the block or the start of the block. So there I am. And then here, maybe I can actually keep my hands out of the way, and you can see here are my two purple dots lined up. Let's see if I can focus a little bit better on it. There you go. You can see my two dots right there lined up. I'm going to do that with the rest of this, and then I'm going to take you over to the ironing station and show you how I go about pressing this. So I'll be right back as soon as I've got these all put together. All right, here is my block all put together, and you can see on this side it's just a typical block. the very first thing that I'm going to do, that I always do, or always try to remember to do, is set my seam. I'm going to set my seam, and it's just simply taking the fabric, rolling it, putting those seams together, and pressing away. Very, very easy to do. All right. Just takes me a minute, but it's worth it. It really helps for your blocks to come out nice and straight. So we're just gonna keep right on going. Almost done. 2 more. Okay, blocks are all in. You can see a difference in it already. To me, it makes a huge difference. But so now I'm going to take my strip stick, and there's a flat spot and then there's a curved spot. I'm going to take my strip stick and I'm just going to lay my fabric over it. The directions tell you to press it like this. So from center to the top, you would press towards the top, center to the other end, you would press that way. I did that. I didn't like the way it looked. So I found that it just, to me, looked a little bit better pressed open. To me, it just laid flatter. So I'm going to separate, and sometimes you have to pick it up to get it to separate. And I just will use my fingers just to do a little finger press. I'm going to bring my iron, and I'm just going to set my iron on top of it, just like that. I'm going to go like this and do it again. Now you can see right here, this point is not quite the way I want it, so I'm going to rotate it around, take my finger, I'm going to finger press it, and then I'm going to put my iron on it. Now you can see I'm not moving my iron around. I am very much doing that on purpose. I do not want to stretch this block, so I do not want to move my iron around. All right, this is my I think it's 6.5 inch block, something like this. This is my medium sized block. And by the time I get to my smallest block, I really want to be careful not to press, or not to iron. I want to press. There is a difference. Ironing is moving, pressing is just press. So I'll keep going here. I will let you watch me. I'll probably speed it up though, because you really don't want to watch me every single step in the amount of time that I spend ironing. I think I spend just as much time pressing as I do sewing sometimes, especially when I'm working on little blocks or projects that are long projects. So here we go. I will keep doing this, and hopefully you will enjoy watching it. The directions tell us to find the center right here and to square it up based on that. I did that, and what I found was that one side of it would have maybe 3/8 of an inch from the point over, and this side might have had a 1/2 an inch or 1/4 of an inch. So what happened was it was not square, wasn't perfect, so that I could balance these blocks all in the center. It happens. We're all human. So what I then did was I took my ruler and I measured from point to point and point to point, point to point, to determine how big this block really was. And I ended up being right about 7 inches all the way around here. So I know my block is 8 inches before it's finished, so 8 inches cut. So I know I need to have a 1/2 inch, 1/2 inch, 1/2 inch, and 1/2 inch in order to make this my straight 8 inch block, which is what I need it to be. So what I'm going to do is I am actually going to take a ruler. This is my Creative Grids 12.5 by 2.5 inch ruler. And I'm going to lay my 1/2 inch side right on these edges. So you can see I'm a 1/2 inch here and I'm a 1/2 inch here. And I'm going to square up directly from that. So here's my first cut. I'm going to rotate it and I'm going to do that again. So I'm 1/2 inch again. And this time I'm paying attention to down here and up the side for my 1/2 inch. So I'm paying attention to more than one spot now. Alright, and now that I've got 2 straight edges, I can grab my ruler. I know I'm at 8, so I can line myself up and square from here. And as you can see, I end up being just under a 1/2 inch. But the better part about it is I can see where I'm short, I'm off a little bit. What I wanted to do was get this to a point that it was manageable with my ruler. Get rid of these sides that are jagged and confusing me and giving me a hard time. So now I am back to exactly where the pattern had me at 4 in 4. Excuse, my dog's making noise. He's in here with me. And I can see I am definitely over my 8, which is fine because now I can actually really, truly square it up to the 8. So I'm going to go up one side, across the top, and I'm going to rotate it one more time. And now I will be able to really have my 8-inch square block, okay? Now, that was a second step, but I needed to do that second step for me and for my block. You may lay your block down and it may be perfectly square without any issues whatsoever. I wanted you to see how I go about fixing it when I'm not perfectly square, because I wasn't. That's all there is to it. There's no ifs, ands, or buts about it. I was not perfectly square. So now you can see I've got my nice block, which is square, and it's ready to go. So I'm very, very excited about this. I'm going to get all of mine squared up per the directions. I'll be back once I've gotten that accomplished so that you can see all 3 of my blocks. Thank you so much for sticking around all the way to the end. Here, obviously, are my 3 blocks all made, all ready to go into the block of the month. I have one last thing to do on these blocks that I have not done yet, and that is I am going to top stitch 1/8 of an inch, if not a 1/16 of an inch, all the way around these blocks. The reason why I'm doing that is because I'm not going to be putting this quilt together right away, and I want to make sure that I protect the integrity of my squared up block. I hope you enjoyed today's video on how to put together these blocks. If you have any questions, please do leave them below and I will get back to you just as soon as I can. Thank you so much for joining me today in this quilt along, and I hope to see you again next month. And I hope to see you again in just a few minutes for block number 2 of this quilt along, the Churn Dash block. So I hope to see you again soon while we work on our second block of this block of the month. Bye everybody.